So, I'm sorry, I didn't even know we were live.
Yeah, we were just going. Literally just going. I even gave him the five finger countdown. He wasn't even watching. Oh dear. Anyway, folks, hi. Welcome to the Hash Rugby Chat. Hi, I'm Paul, the guy behind DrivingMaul, and yes, we are in lockdown, folks, in New Zealand. Or well, we will be on Wednesday midnight. So. With no rugby to discuss, it's going to be an interesting hour. So do join us. We will be talking about rugby, and we'll also be talking about other things around this lockdown as well. And to take you through all of that, I have someone who we've not seen for a while, Ryan Nixon. How you doing, sir?
It's a bit of a weird time, but yeah, I'm doing all right considering the prospect of not having any sport on. I did go out yesterday and buy a PlayStation, so I've got some virtual sports to keep me occupied, but yeah, otherwise I'm all good.
So for those of you that don't know, Ryan is the head of content for the Tribe Sports app, obviously where they do live commentary on all ranges of sports. You said you had one game last night, which was the A-League, and that's now shut down as well. So yeah, quiet times for Ryan, whose life is literally typing about sport. Stephen, how are you doing, sir?
I'm very good, thank you. Always a privilege and a pleasure to be on the TDM, and pretty much strange times, guys. It really is. You're kind of looking around for something to do, maybe old movies. I've got all these old movies, maybe a few sports movies lined up. I definitely want to watch the documentary about Liverpool and the Hillsborough tragedy, although I've been told to maybe have a few tissues.
I was going to say, hang on, things are depressing enough. You're just going to go watch more depressing tragedies. Oh my word! Seriously, Stephen.
No, I'm talking about things that you haven't watched that have been around for a while. So I'm going to have plenty of time on my hands.
And Stephen does Minor 10 Cup rugby commentary for Radio Sport, and he also does comparing for a lot of paddle sports out there as well, and I guess they've all been shut down as well. So all the waka canoeing and outrigger, that is outrigger canoeing, isn't it? And other sort of stuff.
Yeah, dragon boating, Paul. I think you were trying to say.
There we go.
We had the New Zealand Dragon Boat Nationals, which I was supposed to be commentating at coming up this weekend, but obviously that's not happening at all. So it is what it is.
It is what it is. So yes, folks. You say it's only sport. Let's just cancel it's only sport, but it's also an awful lot of people's livelihoods. And over the next couple of days, I'm hoping to chat with Nick Heath, the guy who's suddenly become mega famous for commentating about people crossing the road. If you've not come across Nick Heath on Twitter, yeah, I've got to chat with him because he is a professional commentator who suddenly is out of work. So I hope you look out for that interview over the next few days. I arranged the interview before he became famous. This is now he's in the New York Times and everything. I mean, jeez, God, dear me. So Ryan, you said you popped out today and got yourself a PlayStation. One quick game recommendation then for people before we move on to some rugby.
I've always been a big fan of the Madden NFL football games, so that's one of the games I got. So yeah, if you're a big fan of the NFL, you can't go past Madden football, so that'll keep me occupied for a bit. Oh
dear. Now, talking of the USA, the Major League Rugby have gone and decided and have got themselves into esports now, with Rugby 20 going on between the different clubs. Have you caught up on any of those games, being a gamer?
I've been following kind of what's been happening. I haven't sort of watched any or any of that sort of stuff, but I have kind of been keeping tabs on the Twitter pages, and I think it's a great idea for a league that's sort of 3 years old and kind of growing a user base as well. They can't really afford to just sort of button off and lose all that traction with their social media and fan engagement. So kudos to them for thinking outside the box and getting rugby content of some variety happening between the clubs and kind of building on those sort of rivalries and whatnot that really fuel any sports competition. So yeah, good on them.
And just to point out, folks, the top of the table at the moment is the Gilgronis, who've only won one game in over a year, and are playing as Fiji. So it just shows you, it does come down to the skill of the gaming skill of the players. And perhaps Gilgroni's players should be playing more rugby rather than playing on their computers. That's perhaps the message there. So they've done that. We've seen motorsport in particular has got a lot of their drivers and e-gamers to race each other going forwards. Do you think this is going to be a big sort of shot in the arm for esports? Do you think we're going to see that get a sort of a big boost out of this next 4 weeks?
Yeah, I do. I think it's almost. I don't think anybody's kind of looking for advantages out of this pandemic, but I think in terms of an association or a sport getting a leg up, esports, this is their opportunity, and for people that are desperate for content, desperate for competition and stuff to look at, desperate for things to bet on. I see you can bet on the esports, then this is the start for them, and if they can take advantage and kind of hook in some people who are looking for entertainment and looking for content options beyond your streaming and Netflix and whatnot, then this could be the start of the esports kind of era, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, Steve, you like you keep your eye on the TAB, and I've noticed the TAB are now taking bets on esport. Have you started to investigate this area, or are you keeping your money in your pocket?
Well, I am now. I must admit, I haven't got a lot of money left on my TAB account. But you just want some. It's interesting what Ryan says. Thinking outside the square. I know, talking to a colleague in my day job today, and his wife is a instructor at a gym, and she was going to basically run her classes online, and I thought, what a fantastic idea. So she'll still basically say, for example, if she has a 6 o'clock class for half an hour, just to actually run it online. I think you've really got to think outside the square, and you would hope some of the major sports will be just thinking that way. I mean, to say even rugby, dare I say it.
So thinking outside the square, folks. On Friday, I went over to a friend who she runs a tutoring company. So after school numeracy and literacy tutoring for kids, and I helped to talk to her through how to go online, how to stream. Hey, look, this is what I do all my life, or most of the time is streaming. And yeah, we sat down. I talked her through being a project next, an IT project manager. Took her through all the steps of how to take her business online. Talked to her about the sort of copyright issues she's going to have, how to structure, how to hand out materials, and then and also how to do the actual streaming itself. So if you actually have a business out there and you need someone to help you sit you down and work it all through, give me a call. I can help you do that, by the way. But as you say, we're seeing. I mean, I think Aaron Smith has been doing a few videos on how to train, keep your skills up. I've seen that Blaine Scully has apparently the Captain America, or ex-Captain America, now he's retired. He's been running indoor sessions, or in your to help people keep fit and stuff. Now, a lot of players are doing a lot of things to help. Did you get on to all of the? Last week I've not seen so many now, but last week there were lots of musicians running concerts from their living room. Did you plug into any of those last week? No.
Well, a little. I've got to say, a little guilty. I tuned into the odd one, and once again, it's just a case of looking around for content with the greatest respect for television. You can, if you're basically just on maybe on a Freeview program, you turn television one on an any evening night, and all you're watching is First Married, The Bachelor, and I'm going, seriously, is this what we've arrived at? So
that's what I've skipped to be here. I've got Bachelorette recording. I'll have to catch up with it later. I mean, we're getting down to the championship minutes too. It's an important time. So,
folks, if I'm clashing with some of the big TV stuff, perhaps I should move my time slot. Do let me know. Yeah, is the Bachelorette a big competition issue for me? It does seem to be down to just lots of that kind of stuff. Any box sets then, Stephen, that you've been jumping on and watching? Any recommendations for people? Because you were saying you're going to go through retro movies, so.
Oh yeah, this is shocking. I don't even really want to admit this.
Come on
the live stream, but I am. I watched a series on the weekend, and it was called Toy Boys.
Oh dearie me!
And it was about male exotic dancers, believe it or not. But there was good storyline behind it.
Good. I'm glad you enjoyed it, Steve.
But that was like self isolation. I've got to say.
Go on, Ryan. What's the current box set you're working through?
I've actually just started the new series on Netflix of Ugly Delicious, which is a food-based show hosted by a guy, David Chang. And they kind of look at just different foods each episode, with the premise being that they're generally ugly kind of foods to look at. So things like tacos or fried chicken, or the last one I watched, he actually went through steak. And they just kind of check out different steak places or whatever the food is, have a few celeb guests or celeb chef guests on, and just kind of dive into the culture of that food and talk to some of the experts and go to kind of some interesting places. So I think it's a really interesting show. It's kind of a different take on your usual sort of food show. So yeah, I recommend checking that out if you want.
My favourite food show was Man vs. Food. I don't know if that's still going or not, but listen, gluttony. To give you a taste of what I've been watching, I go down the sci-fi route, sci-fi dystopia route. So I've been watching. I've got 3 box sets on the go at the moment: The Magicians, The Expanse, and also The Man in the High Castle. So Man in the High Castle is where the Nazis and the Japanese won World War II, and it's so dystopia future. The Expanse, sci-fi, obviously in space. Magicians, then like fantasy stuff with magic, funnily enough. So 3 different styles of them: Toy Boys, food, or fantasy. Up to you. Or maybe that was fantasy for you, Steve. I was
going to say, I am on Stephen Jones' Times Online Troll Alert though.
Okay, let's go there. Right then. So Stephen Jones has done it. They've gone and asked him and was it Stuart Barnes, or I think it was
Stuart Barnes.
To produce their top 10 rugby captains of all time. Stuart Barnes comes out with your kind of standard ones along the lines of people like Richie McCaw, etc., who have sort of won Rugby World Cups and have done wonderful things. Stephen Jones comes out with. It doesn't even include Richie McCaw. Even includes Mario Toji, who isn't a captain for his club and isn't a captain for his country, but still has him down as one of the 10 best captains of all time. And Stephen here asked me, "What's wrong with Steve Jones? I mean, why do you ignore him? He's got awards and stuff. I mean, come on, Steve. How can you take him seriously on anything he writes?"
I don't know. I sent him a text. I tweeted him once, and I basically said, "Listen, I think the All Blacks are just living rent-free in your mind," which I think is quite a bit of a hard case comment, and he pretty much blocked me on Twitter straight away. But I know, having a chat to a couple of other journalists, Tony Johnson, who's basically sat in the press box not too far from him, he's apparently a very interesting character, and it pretty much is clickbait at the end of the day, and unfortunately people like me gets pretty much caught up. There are some stuff that he writes about that you could probably agree with, but to be completely dismissive of somebody like Richie McCaw and pick some unknown Romanian player that I'd never heard of as the 10th place captain, but at least his colleague Stuart Barnes seemed to have a little bit of common sense.
What are your thoughts on Stephen Jones before I dive in, Ryan?
It's interesting because like I agree. I think that a lot of it is clickbait, and that's how they pay the bills, get people clicking their articles and whatnot. The irony of that is, why do you then go and block people if your whole sort of profession is based around, stirring the pot and getting people riled up about things? You're going to have to expect that people are going to come at you with different opinions, and just blocking those people is just pointless. You just end up in some sort of big echo chamber, and what does that achieve? Twitter's a great platform for rugby debate, and if you're not willing to defend your position against people with different opinions, then what's the point of even being on there?
Yeah, that's one thing. The other, I'll come back to that one. But on Stephen Jones, look, he's an old school journalist, right? He'll talk about the subscription base of the Times, and basically he's not really on Twitter to promote his stuff or as such, or to have debate. It is purely just about to promote it to his fans, who will then go and read it. So he's an old school journalist. From my point of view, he is a pure clickbait. I don't think anything he writes is serious, and because I don't want to encourage that kind of stuff, I avoid his stuff and refuse to click on it, refuse to sort of talk about him normally online. So if you go back through all the episodes, you'll probably find that I never mentioned Stephen Jones's name. So don't. And this is a one-off. But yeah, so look, folks, if you want to have good stuff on Twitter, then engage with good stuff. If you engage with bad stuff, you're just encouraging it, and you're just going to have more and more of it. Calling, I understand that there is this culture nowadays of that calling people out is supposed to be a good thing and taking a stand, but by doing it sometimes, all you're doing is giving them extra publicity. So call out or stuff that you like, not so much stuff you don't like, is my advice for social media. Social media. So yes, so I have an extensive block and mute list on Twitter. Because for me, Twitter is more about promoting my stuff than necessarily. And so if you don't like my stuff and you don't like what I do, then I'm not there for you. I'm there for the people who do like my stuff. Maybe that does create a bit of an echo chamber. But if you respectfully disagree with me, that's fine. If you call me a knobhead, I'm going to block you, put bluntly, because I just don't need that kind of stuff going on. Steve, what's your approach when someone calls you a knobhead on Twitter? Do you block them, or do you continue the talk?
I actually don't mind a challenge. Like I'll post on the social network. Sometimes you could, it's easy to jump on Facebook and call somebody like Sonny Bill Williams a show pony, but for crying, a short comment like that, to me, there's just not enough content or really not enough detail to come out why the guy's a show pony. I mean, so people just say the dumb things. I will post something, but I don't really mind being challenged if somebody's prepared to come back to me with a good on the social network. It doesn't really worry me, but I do like it when somebody comes back and actually challenges me on a point that I've actually made. I don't confess to be correct on everything, but I don't think there's anything wrong with being challenged. And I think, coming back just to Stephen Jones before that's what really annoys me. I'd like to challenge the guy on a few of these things just to see what he says, but he's obviously a guy who's got an opinion, and it's his opinion or nothing.
So Ryan, long block and mute lists, or
mine's actually pretty short, and I'm happy just ignoring someone if they have a chip at me, and just it's okay, unless it's a prolonged kind of thing, and unless I see absolutely no value in what they always are posting, and it's fine for someone to disagree with you as long as they can back up their opinion. I think the thing that annoys me most on Twitter is people arguing for the sake of arguing when they're not open to having their mind changed. So if you're going to have a debate, about something, then you need to kind of be prepared to see both sides. And if you're just coming in, wading into a fight and never looking to kind of see the other side of the fence, then what's the point? That doesn't achieve anything for anyone. So I'm keen to debate things with people on Twitter, and I try and look at things from their side as well, if they can, provide a basis for their opinion. But some people just kind of can't do that. So, yeah.
Actually, case in point, Ryan, I don't profess to be a real backer of the current government coalition party, but one thing I will concede, I think our Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern is doing an amazing job at the minute in such challenging times. But I've got some really good friends who are pro the other party, and they just will not cut her a bit of slack. But I'll gladly debate with them. I'll basically fight for her cause, because I think she's doing a pretty amazing job at the minute in very challenging times.
And on that, I saw someone post the example of this the other day. It'd be like, New Zealand could be the first country to get rid of the coronavirus and kind of be leading the world, and national, ardent national fans would say, well, why didn't we do it 3 days earlier, kind of thing. It's like, sometimes you just got to say, hey, hats off, we're due. So, yeah.
I think one thing you can say about Jacinda, whatever side you're on, is that she does well in a crisis, and we've seen that twice now. Now, whether you agree with how she's with the actions she's taken during those crises is a different ballgame. But she puts herself out there, she's present, and she talks. So, she's definitely a crisis, good in a crisis, from as which at the moment is kind of what you need. Let's be blunt. So yes, for those of you actually outside New Zealand, we have one of the things that New Zealand's done that no one else has done, as far as I can see, is make some clear alert levels. So you understand and you basically go through the alerts, and gives a bit of clarity as to what's happening at that level. It's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, as everyone tries to figure out whether liquor stores are considered essential or not, or off licenses for the English people. Because there's some queues outside of off licenses thinking, hey, they might close. Can I survive for 4 weeks without any beer? I'll be honest, I popped into, before she finished speaking on Monday, I popped into Pack and Save and grabbed an extra case of beer, just in case. So I got my ex called me very Kiwi. I got a case of beer, a pie, and some milk and some frozen fruit. So yeah, beer and pie were the things I ran for as soon as I realised I was in lockdown, which I think is I've gone Kiwi, folks. Ryan, what as a Kiwi, was there anything else I should have grabbed? What's the typical Kiwi thing to grab when going into lockdown, do you think?
Probably a couple of bags of pineapple lumps and
yes, good point.
a bag of Feijoas or something. I don't know. When I was in the UK, Feijoas were the thing I had a massive craving for. Just like, oh my gosh, that's what I missed from home. But it's coming into their season, so they'll probably be around in abundance as they normally are. So it's probably not something you needed to panic buy, although it hasn't stopped all the other things that people are panic buying that they don't need to. So,
Stephen, what did I miss? What was the Kiwi thing I should have quickly grabbed on as I went through the supermarket?
Well, I was about to say I have a Feijoa tree, and you are right, Ryan. They're just a little bit firm at the moment, but then they're not too far away from being fully ripe. And they actually make a really good crumble as well. Feijoa crumble is very, very underrated. Very nice. I'm very fortunate. I'm married to a lady who, like, when I look in the fridge, I always look in the fridge and go, what's to eat? There's nothing there. The difference is my wife will look in the fridge and she'll make a gourmet meal. And that's the difference between my wife and I. I'll just basically give up, go down the road, go down to the takeaway, but that's out of the question now. Although there are plenty of options, I'm only really a couple of minutes from what they call Heart Attack Alley, which is Lincoln Road, and where there's a lot of takeaway outlets on. But unfortunately, I don't think a lot of those takeaways are going to be open. But crazily enough, there were apparently queues to get to McDonald's over the last 2 or 3 nights. So what does that tell you? In terms of myself, listen, I'll be happy if we've got a little bit of rice around, which we have. I think you can pretty much do anything with rice.
I've got noodles as my carb, so yep, nice and easy. Noodles and frozen dumplings is my go-to. Cracking an egg, throw in some frozen peas, and hey presto, you've got your dumpling noodle soup, all cooked in one pan. That's my fallout shelter dinner for you folks. So one of the things that was happening before this all kicked off was New Zealand Rugby kicked off a review of things, and they were suggesting things such as having regional academies based with the Super Rugby teams rather than provinces having academies. They were talking about the Mitre 10 Cup not being a sort of full-time professional competition anymore. As two guys who have played club rugby in New Zealand, have followed the Mitre 10 Cup. I think, Ryan, do you still follow club rugby in North Harbour? Yep. So you saw, both guys who follow club rugby. What are your thoughts on those suggestions by New Zealand Rugby, and are they going the right way about sort of trying to stem the drop in player numbers?
I don't think they are. I think that club rugby has always been the lifeblood of New Zealand rugby, and the hard thing has been that with professionalism, it's kind of been left behind. There's no real transition from school rugby through club rugby now. High-level school players basically skip club rugby and go straight into Mitre 10 Cup and even straight into Super Rugby teams. So there's a real disconnect between the clubs, and this just sounds like it's further going to disconnect because the Mitre 10 Cup teams are probably going to get left behind as well, and it's almost just going to be this 3-step process where you go schools, Super, All Blacks. It's a shame because I grew up playing club rugby as a junior, and my Saturday would have been playing rugby in the morning, going and watching the local first 15, then going and watching the Premier club team, and then going home and watching a game on TV. And you used to see All Blacks playing club rugby as well, and that's probably never going to happen again, but at least they need some way of dropping guys down and getting that sort of talent right through. And I don't have the answer to it, but I think what the review kind of came out with is just going to make it worse in terms of, club rugby is probably going to die, and then Mitre 10 Cup's the one that seems to follow on from that.
Yeah, there does seem to be talking about people playing against All Blacks. Stephen, did you say you played against Michael Jones once?
I actually played with Michael Jones.
Played with Michael Jones, sorry.
At Mitre, lucky enough to play against University when they were basically pretty much like a provincial side. Guys like Grant Fox and David Kirk with a halves, so it gives you an idea how handy they were. The late commentator John Drake was in the side. They were crazy good, and I can recall Waitemata playing University, and a game at Waitemata Park, night game, getting around about 3,000 people, middle of the week on a Wednesday night to turn up. Yeah, listen, club rugby's always been the lifeblood. I'm hearing a few horror stories. I know that Glenfield over in North Harbour, they're actually struggling before all the coronavirus basically took over. They were struggling to put together a senior team, and that was all about not being able to actually find a coach. And I know that several Auckland clubs were actually just struggling to get initial numbers. Even a club like Ponsonby, who took out the Gallagher Shield last year, were actually struggling in certain areas. It really is a concern, and as Ryan said, a lot of the secondary schools rugby that gets covered, it's pretty high profile now, and the best players get cherry picked, and the guys who pretty much used to go to 5th grade, 3rd grade, just to basically develop to a higher level, are just pretty much unfortunately giving the game away. What I have noticed is in club rugby, especially in Auckland, is the age of a lot of the Auckland teams are getting younger and younger, but you're also getting, on the other scale of it, a lot of guys that have played 120, 150 odd games that are just basically hanging around almost to make numbers up. So even depth is a struggle at that club level.
I think something that Steve just touched on there is actually quite a really interesting and valid point, and that it used to be that you came out of school, you went through the club, and it was a real, a progression in that a school club might attend All Blacks before Super Rugby, and then when Super Rugby came in, it slotted into that gap. But now, because talent is being ID'd at school level, if you leave school and you're not identified as a potential professional player, where's the attraction in going to a club and kind of slaving away, unless you're just playing for the love of the game, which people still do. Before, you used to have that sort of cherry that was there. If I go to a club and I play well, then I can make a rep team. That's kind of taken away from you before you even get there now.
Yeah, but
a couple.
I was about to say, Paul. It also, just touching furthermore on what Ryan was saying, it was a real prestige to make an Auckland age group side as well, whether it's an under 18 side, under 19, or if you made those Auckland, especially if you made the Auckland Colts, you were pretty much almost like 60-70%. You would probably end up playing for the Auckland top side. So all those pathways are really no longer there for the players. Well, they're obviously still there for the players who maybe have been making Auckland secondary schools under 19s. They've already been ear tagged. But sometimes you've got some players who are really late developers. Just to give you an example, somebody like DJ Forbes never played first 15 at Kelston Boys, but pretty much ended up making New Zealand sevens.
Well, a couple of things. First off, around getting sort of managing to get enough players to fill the team. Tairua is a small coastal town that basically survives on tourism and a bit of a very small amount of commercial fishing. They are in the back end of nowhere, playing in a Heartland Championship province. They had 12 foreign players, so they could actually fill the team last year. I don't know what they've got this year, or what they were going to have this year. But they now, are those foreign players getting paid? No, they're not. They're coming over the club helps them get a local job, be it at the butcher or kiwi fruit picking or whatever, and then those players and they basically come over for the experience. In Waikato, where we're talking a Mitre 10 Cup and Super Province, you're talking the Hautapu had someone who was an ex-Edinburgh Academy player who didn't get a contract, so he came over here. He was working at the local stud, basically mucking out horses, sheds, and putting up fences. A far cry from being an academy player for Edinburgh, playing for Hautapu, and then got recognised and got to play at Mitre 10. But he only got that place because Luke Jacobson had been selected for the All Blacks. Otherwise, the Waikato squad was already picked before club rugby, and they had like 3 slots available for club rugby players to try and get into. So this idea of making that of playing well at club and making rep, again, the majority of those places already before this change comes in are already being filled and contracts ahead of time. You can't blame players because they want the certainty of a 3-year contract so they can actually know how they're going to earn their money and be able to pay a mortgage or whatever. But it does mean that it doesn't matter how well it's not about how you play in club rugby this season to make up the non-Super Rugby players anymore. It is academy people or people who have been contracted over several years. The other side of it is that Stephen and I we tried to organise an event at Waitemata Rugby Club last season, and Aroni Clark, the ex All Black, Blues, Auckland, and Waitemata rugby player, was going to come along and do an interview free of charge because it was raising money for the clubs, and that would have helped basically keep the club financed to help keep the club going. With these players now not coming through club rugby, they're not going to go back and do sort of post-career speaking events to help fund the club, are they? They're going to want money for those. I think that link there, I think the funding of these rugby clubs is going to become harder and harder as they don't have these sort of club celebrities to come back and help them out as well. I think it's another point that's going to hurt the clubs. I listened to a podcast between Ardi Surveyor and Akira Iwani, and he couldn't even his mum represented New Zealand, and he couldn't even remember didn't even remember they were called the Black Ferns, which I found kind of amusing. Look, this current generation don't necessarily have that history or that love. I mean, some of them do. Don't get me wrong, but some of them also, it is a job. It isn't. They don't have that love for the game or the history of the game, so the culture of the game that they that people used to. Ryan, did you notice the Chiefs Cup this year?
No. What?
So this year the Chiefs ran a competition where the 4 provinces. So what's it? So that's Waikato, Bay of Plenty, Counties Manukau, and Taranaki competed for the Chiefs Cup. So they had played I think it was like 3 rounds of games before Super Rugby got called off. So the non-Super Rugby players were getting a go.
Right.
But actually, when I got in touch with a couple of those provinces to say, hey, can I do media for these events? They said, oh, it's not our teams. It's been organised by the Chiefs. They're just wearing our jerseys. Which shows you that they were Chiefs Academy games, and the players weren't getting enough rugby, so they were making up games rather than having them play club rugby. So
Paul, I was going to say, if you can think about the Chiefs' injury toll over the last several seasons, they probably decided to have 4 teams running around and have a selection of guys that were in reasonable shape at the early stages of the season. Because in the past, they've pretty much had to go into their development squad, but have used so many players from the development squad, you've just had to pluck players out from anywhere. But if you've got your 4 provincial teams running around together with first-class players, I think it just gives you a few options up the sleeve. So hence it worked relatively well. I think the other reasoning in behind it was Bay of Plenty were also going to get involved. I think they wanted some pre-season games because they were getting involved with Rapid Rugby as well, which was really interesting. And we obviously caught wind about that last year, so it was obviously basically designed for them to be a little bit more financial. And Bay of Plenty were one of those forward-thinking unions from the Mitre 10 Cup last year that I think they did it really, really well.
Yeah, they did. It's a real shame that got called off. By the way, if you go to DrivingMaul.com to behind the scenes, I've got an interview with the CEO from Bay of Plenty about their involvement with the with Global Rapid Rugby. They only lasted 1 game, unfortunately, before it all got called off. And also, if you go to For Your Ears Only, I had a preview of that season, which you were going to say, Paul, but the season's already happened. Yeah, I know it has. But there are a couple of interviews in there that I did with the China Lions head coach and the fly half. So, I've gone blank as to the fly half's name. Begins with H. The Bay of Plenty fly half.
Jan Hollandshead.
There you go, Hollandshead. So if you want to have a listen to those interviews about Global Rapid Rugby, go over to DrivingMaul.com. And I had those because I went over to their pre-season game versus Manuma Samoa. Was the team that they played in that game. And we saw a red card, by the way. A proper punch was thrown. Go old school. My other concern is going to be, and Stephen, you'll Ryan, you'll get this. In fact, that look, the Blues. Everyone thought basically if you didn't play for Auckland, you didn't get selected for the Blues back in the day. and there was a big, that was the feeling in North Harbour, that playing for North Harbour you didn't really have a chance. Now for Stephen's province of Northland, don't even think of it yet. I mean that's not just north of the bridge; that's a long way north of the bridge. By having these academies in just basically Auckland, Hamilton, Wellington, Christchurch, and Dunedin, anyone who's playing down in New Plymouth, anyone who's playing down in the Hawke's Bay, anyone who's playing down in Southland, the chances of them getting into that academy is going to be tiny, isn't it? We're just surely they're also just going to be narrowing the funnel where you want it wide in catching talent.
I think it also puts a bit of pressure on those talent ID guys, and that it's all happening much earlier. And I think one of the big criticisms with the Blues has been who have slipped through the net and got away from the Blues region and gone elsewhere. And you look at the guys like Jack Goodhue, Braden Enor, Josh Ioane, they're all guys that went to school in Auckland that somehow escaped the Blues, talent ID guys. And there's the big risk if you're developing these academies in your franchise and picking guys early, is that who are you missing? Who's going to other teams? So there's that kind of challenge with what you said as well.
Yep. Steve, were you about to?
Yeah, Paul. Something that's frustrated me over the years with Auckland. Like, listen, everything in life, if you're in a role, everything is measurable, and I don't really know if some of the guys who have been involved in Blues rugby have actually been measured or they've hit their KPIs. Like, I know there's been a bit of criticism in and around Tony Hanks, who's the recruitment manager for the Blues. Ryan spoke about a lot of those players. Yeah, Adam Pari Parkinson as well. He was also running around for St Kettigans. It does leave you scratching your head how these guys are able to continue in their job. I know I'm basically with my own full-time role. We are measured in a very, very big way, and we've got to tick a lot of boxes, a lot of KPIs, and if you don't hit those KPIs, it's a case of please explain. So it does. It frustrates me no end. It frustrates me even no end that the Blues were actually having a good season this year. And I feel as a Blues supporter, I know it's been sawn off at the knees, sort of thing. Sorry, Cornflake, if you're listening. Yeah, it's just absolutely frustrating. But why has it taken so long?
Well, okay. There's another thing. It's in your line of work. Your KPIs are quickly measurable. If you don't do if you don't do something in a month, you're heading in the wrong direction. One of the things that's pointed out in this, I've seen a tweet about New Zealand going into lockdown is it takes 14 days to take effect because of the incubation period. So we're going to see numbers go up of cases in New Zealand for the next 2 weeks. Now, during that time, the KPIs are going in the wrong direction, but you've taken the action so that in 2 weeks' time, it'll head in the right direction. A bit like that in rugby. If your KPI is delivering players to the Blues, and you're looking at 16-year-olds, it takes 5 years before you actually know whether that person did a good job or not. So it's hard to fire someone early because they can justifiably say, look, these guys will come good in 5 years. But it does mean that if you do make a change, it takes 5 years for it to take effect. If you get it wrong, it's a long time before it goes right again. And a lot of this academy stuff is we won't. They can put this in. We won't see a difference for the first, for one World Cup cycle. It's the World Cup cycle afterwards that you're going to go, ooh, hang on, where did all the players go? And once you've turned that tap off, turning it back on again is going to take at least 4, if not 8 years, or 1 or 2 Rugby World Cup cycles, by which time, that's an eternity. Who knows where we're going to be in 12 years' time, in all honesty. So there's been some suggestions that if Super Rugby doesn't have any rugby for 5 weeks, which, let's be honest, it's looking like that some of the teams will go bust, and we won't have Super Rugby next year. So I'm not sure there's much for us to discuss on that really, because it's pure speculation, and it's one line from the CEO of Sanzar. But these things aren't things are measurable, but the problem is, what do you measure and how long before it actually gets, how long to fix something, I guess, is a problem. On that line, Ben Darwin was saying that a new coach should be given, was it 10 games before you can, I think it's 10 games before you can actually judge whether a coach is actually doing something good with the team or not, from a connectivity point of view.
Paul, that's a tough one, because you might have 2 or 3 real key players in your team, and you lose those guys to injury, and the quality that you've got in key positions, may not be good enough. I often marvel at the Highlanders. They always used to sort of play above their station, but it was very noticeable when they didn't have maybe the 2 Smiths playing. So Ben Smith, Aaron Smith, and there was somebody else who was key to their...
Lima Sopawanga was another one.
Yeah, Lima Sopawanga. You could just see it. The performance was down. You could see it a little bit in the Crusaders as well, when they haven't got Richie Moanga on deck. I mean, to say no disrespect, but Brett Cameron is nowhere near the player. So sometimes just having quality in those positions. We've spoken heaps about the Blues not having quality in specific positions yet. They've been a hell of a lot better this year, and that's because guys have stood up. All of a sudden you've got Sam Knock in that contentious number 9 jersey. Looks like he's finally found his feet at this particular level, and it's taken him a while. But there's been a lot of chop and change selections as well, even under Tana's watch, which I don't think has actually helped. So there's a lot of variables as well.
Oh, there are, no doubt, absolutely. Just to name drop, I've got an interview with Lima Sopawanga tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. So that recording will come out sometime tomorrow about the impact that it's having on players. So if you want to listen to that, DrivingMaul.com. Sometime tomorrow afternoon, I'll be putting out my interview with Lima Sopawanga. So just clang, little name drop there for you. Do we just have too many professional clubs, Ryan, or should teams be able to lose someone like Rich Moanga and still be able to play?
I don't think we've got too many. I think 5's probably the right number in terms of super franchises for us.
I was thinking globally.
Globally. Well, I don't know. I think you look at some of the sizes of some of the rosters too. Like, I think we play too many games, and I think that's actually where the problem is. If you had shorter seasons, you could have shorter, smaller squads, and then particularly looking at the European clubs, then they're not under so much pressure to have such massive squad depth. And you look at some of the clubs in the I notice this when I'm entering lineups in each week. Some of the French clubs will rotate a whole team, week to week, and they're basically playing, fortnightly games. So why aren't they just playing fortnightly games full stop kind of thing? So I think the global calendar's just got too many games of rugby in it. And I think if you reduce that, you reduce player workload, then you reduce the need for such massive squads, and your quality becomes higher across the board. That'd be my opinion.
This coronavirus could actually be almost a blessing if you think about it, guys, because they're going to have to start from scratch again next year. So you never know. There might be an opportunity to basically get that global calendar heading in the right direction as Paul shakes his head. I'm just really putting it out there. But something I liked about what Ryan said is the shorter season. You got to make people hungry in that shorter season. You think of the NFL, where their season, what's their season, Ryan? Three months, is it?
Yeah, they play 16 regular season games, and then
but they have
they
have 2 buys, right? So 18. So it's 18 weeks.
1 bye.
Oh, is it 1 bye? Okay,
Just 1 bye.
So 17 weeks plus 3 rounds. So very similar to Super Rugby with 18 weeks and 3 rounds as well. Just they don't have the players then going off to play international. That is it.
Yeah. And it's a 32 team competition. So
So what was so wrong with Super 12, guys? That's seriously that's where, if you think about it, that's where the problem began. Really and truthfully, is when they decided, broadcaster wants more content. Yeah, we'll just go and make teams up. And then you had those teams like the Kings, and that was a horrible look. Sorry, John O'Connor, but when we were watching games from the Port Elizabeth area in these big flash stadiums with 3 seagulls in the reserves, and seriously, you thought the coronavirus was around then. It wasn't a good look, and it put a lot of people off. And if you think back to those 12 teams at the time, they were reasonably competitive. I thought South Africa back then was a lot tougher to tour. I think they had it right there. I think they just tampered with something that wasn't broke. Then you basically throw in the fact that all of a sudden, go back to Graham Henry when he decided to pull All Blacks out of the competition. I like the idea of a smaller amount of teams and a shorter seasons. Then there's no real excuse to rest these guys. They can maybe get some sort of rest during the bye week. Mind you, there's one upside for the All Black coaches at the minute. They're getting a lot of rest at the minute.
Well, yes, and that I think from a player welfare point of view, as long as you don't get the coronavirus, this could be very good for a lot of players. But it's going to be a matter of one of the things about having a proper off season is you can structure your comeback and you can structure your training so you're ready to go when it goes. One of the problems the players have got now is, and the coaches and everyone else is, they don't know when they're next playing. If you listen to some people, they would have been playing. They're going to have a 2-week gap and then start games again, which means they'll be starting next weekend. Well, that's clearly not happening now. But the training they were doing for the past 2 weeks was lining themselves up to have a game. So they weren't having the rest period necessarily that they would do. They would still be doing pretty heavy training. Now suddenly it's 4 weeks away. Do you try and decondition and recondition, or do you try and maintain your condition on the assumption you might be playing? That kind of thing. So it's going to be difficult for the players, I think, as to how they train, and some of that stuff I'll try and discuss with Lima tomorrow. But it's difficult, but it could be a good time for these guys to have a proper break. I know you suggest, yes, this is an opportunity for World Rugby to smash heads together and say, guys, let's restructure for next year. Look, it worked or it didn't work having shorter seasons. I just can't see the will being there to do that.
One thing, this is kind of worst case scenario in terms of Super Rugby teams falling over or going bankrupt or whatever. Let's say that they all did and the competition went bankrupt, then something will pop up in its place, and that might be the kind of the silver bullet we need to say, well, look, the competition fell over, everyone ran out of money, someone's come in, invested in new comp, let's start it again and get it right. And it probably means no South Africa, it probably means no Argentina, it probably means a geographically more sensible competition. Dare I hope that happens? Part of me says yes, but let's just get some rugby back first, I think.
And this is part of the thing, isn't it? Do governments step in and prop up like Rugby Australia, that we know? Look, Rugby Australia isn't viable. Let's be blunt here. It's been a zombie. It's been walking dead for about 4 years financially, and it's a matter of when it's going to collapse, really, rather than if it collapses. Here is an opportunity to actually, yes, collapse it and restart. Because look, there is going to be a an administration in Australia running rugby. You can just make this one go bust, which is a shame because I think Raelene Clark's actually trying to head things in generally the right direction after some real mismanagement for a number of years, and unfortunately maybe you'd get in the wrong people. But yeah, you're right. There is definitely a possibility here. Simon Hughes says, Andrew Forrester to step in and do Global Rapid Rugby. I thought that Global, and I think I mentioned this last week, so I don't want to go into too much detail, but I thought Global Rapid Rugby had a massive opportunity here to fly all the teams to Fiji quickly and run their season out of Fiji. You could find yourself six hotels that are empty at the moment, book them out for the next month or for 11 weeks, and basically have the players isolated, a bit like NRL was suggesting doing. Fly their families out there, have a wonderful 11-week working holiday in Fiji. Off you go.
And Paul, I was going to say, and then you can hit it up with Todd Greenberg and Peter Valande to hit them. That'd be ideal, wouldn't they?
I have no idea who they are.
They're the two guys running NRL.
Oh, okay.
Those are the two guys running NRL. Yeah.
I think there's a bit of a difference between what they were trying to do and if you'd said, hey, we're flying all the teams and their families to Fiji. I think the optics would be slightly different. They were particularly tone deaf at the NRL, I think. They should have played behind closed doors that first round straight away, but they were like, nah. And they read the whole situation totally wrong.
Didn't read the mood in the room, so to speak.
Yeah.
I saw someone tweet that was like, yes, I saw someone tweet that the year is 2027. Most of the world is dead from coronavirus, but the NRL's playing on, and we'll monitor the situation closely.
Oh, that's absolutely brilliant. But hey, listen, all in all, it's actually a good product. You do get. I mean, I know it's the other coast, but they actually do it very, very well. But boy, the arrogance of that organisation. There were times during my life where I thought the New Zealand Rugby Union, some of the people that ran the New Zealand Rugby Union pretty much had holes in their heads. But no, these guys, they were pretty much next level.
Well, I think the difference is the Rugby Union, New Zealand Rugby Union is complacent rather than arrogant, whereas these guys, were being were being arrogant about it. But one of the things they do really well, I think, is the kind of mantra of collaborate off the pitch, compete on the pitch, which I think is a great way of looking at it, which Rugby Union has not managed to figure out. The Super Rugby Unions,
they collaborated on their away jerseys.
Yeah, they collaborated to make them the same. Exactly.
Oh, that's right.
But for example, one of the things I would do, for example, is across my Sencup provinces, I would have a weekly, definitely during the competition, is have a weekly conference call between all the media managers, have a weekly conference call between all the business development managers, etc. So where they can share ideas. If you ask some of the media managers who are the media managers at the other provinces, they don't even know them. I mean, never mind actually talk and share ideas. No, they don't even know each other. So the idea of collaboration off the field just isn't happening between these people, unfortunately. Well, guys, we managed to get through an hour of rugby without talking about rugby very much. So, Ryan, thank you very much for joining me. Don't forget, have a think about that retro game that sticks in the memory for you. I did the 2011 Crusaders versus the Sharks last week, and hopefully at 8 p.m. tomorrow night I'll be doing the 2011 Super Rugby final with Shane and John O'Connor. On Thursday I'm doing the 2000 NPC final, which was between Canterbury and Wellington, where Wellington won their first title their first final ever. So, yeah, guys, have a think of a game that sticks in your memory for whatever reason. Preferably once on YouTube so I can watch it. So if you say first 11 between Mags and St Kent's, then from 1998, I might struggle.
First 11, we cricket, hockey.
Sorry, first 15.
Soccer.
Sorry.
Paul, I've got one from you, and I don't YouTube, but it's from around about 2003. I'll find out exactly when it was played, but it was Northland v Auckland at Eden Park, and a fella by the name of Rupini Tautau Nambuka arrived on the scene, scored an amazing try, and a fella by the name of James Arledge, who wasn't wanted by Auckland at the time, kicked the sideline conversion, and what was an amazing game. But if you look at that Auckland team, it had some abs. Carlos Spencer at first five, Ali Williams, Doug Howlett. It wasn't by any means a very weak Auckland side. Hey guys, I knew my world had changed a couple of weeks ago. Because my first order of business is to look at my Tribe app on a Saturday or Sunday morning, but to look at the app and find there was no sport is probably the most heartbreaking thing that's pretty much happened to me this year. So my thoughts go out to basically everybody at Tribe, Brian. Hopefully we can get some sort of content up and running, but it's an absolutely brilliant app. The number of people that I've mentioned about over the years and said, oh, what's that? And they've jumped on and they're, wow, this is a great app. How many customers do you actually have? Or people?
Oh, can't talk commercials. God.
Yeah, I probably can't share that, to be honest. But
okay. Oh, we'll go off here then.
It's a good. I could tell you off here. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Well, Simon suggested I find the 1976 NPC final. Wow, that's going back some way. We'll see, Simon, about that, whether I can find that one. But yeah, so some retro will be coming up, both on the YouTube channel and also on the podcast. If you'd like to support the channel, head over to DrivingMaul.com and click there. You can become a supporter of the channel. As I say, Lima Sopawanga's interview will be there tomorrow afternoon. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Stephen, for joining me. Hope you're all staying safe, folks. And the Hash Rugby Chat will continue every Tuesday at 8 p.m.